it's going to be a crazy week, and I think what's so exciting and unsettling for the Ravens is how does this fall? How do these dominoes start to fall? I think so much attention has been paid in the short term. We know Joe Flacco's going to Denver. That's already been decided. That's been decided for about a month now. That was the first big domino that I think everyone was wondering about. And they re-signed Tavon Young. They got a deal done with Nick Boyle. But what happens with C.J. Mosley? What happens with Terrell Suggs? I think we all assume that Zadarius Smith is going to get a better deal elsewhere, although you never know. But I think it's so tough to kind of envision how this next week is going to go for the Ravens without knowing what that first significant domino is. And if it's C.J. Mosley hitting the market and signing with Arizona or
Cleveland,
Philadelphia or wherever, it changes the course of the Ravens significantly. If it's Mosley re-signing with the Ravens, then you know that that's going to be a significant financial commitment for the Ravens right there. So, there continues to be smoke about Le'Veon Bell. And
how do you feel about Mosley now that the thing's gone to market? Is he gone in your mind?
I think it's always more difficult when they hit the market because all it takes is one team to say, we're going to make you a $15 million a year linebacker. And I think the Ravens really want to keep C.J. Mosley, but I don't know if they're willing to go $15 or $16 million a year. I don't know if they like him that much. You have to really love him. You have to over-the-top love a player to give them the kind of money that's going to reset the market at their position. And I don't know if the Ravens are there with C.J. Mosley. I will say this, though, Nestor. Even though everyone kind of assumes once he's out there officially and other teams are negotiating with him that it's over, well, 2 years ago, Brandon Williams got to that point. Brandon Williams was on the market, and I think we got to a point where you and I probably had a very similar conversation thinking that, it's probably over, and then they re-signed him. Now, 2 years into that, we can certainly debate whether that was the best thing for the Ravens or not, based on the fact that I think Brandon Williams has continued to be really, really solid and has played well, but maybe not at the contract that the Ravens gave him. So I think there's some similarities to that, certainly, but I think when you look at where the Ravens are right now with their defense, knowing that Eric Weddle's gone, we've already talked about that at length, I'm fully confident they're going to bring in a safety that will offer better physical tools and quite possibly better individual play. But when you talk about the intangibles, you talk about the mental side of this, that's a loss that the Ravens are going to feel. No one will convince me otherwise in that regard as far as what Weddle brought from a mental standpoint. So if you...
Well, the Rams had no problem paying $6 million a year for him.
Sure. But my point is, if you then lose C.J. Mosley and then what happens with Terrell Suggs, you are really changing not just how this defense looks from a position-to-position basis, but experience level, film study.
Well, I said last week, if they had to go out and play this week without Weddle, without Suggs, without C.J. Mosley, they're bad football. They're on the other side of 8 wins. They're on this side of 8 wins, not that side of 8 wins. And that's playing with a rookie quarterback in Lamar Jackson. I'll still call him that. He won't be that next year. But and with whatever their offense is going to be right now, they've got a lot of work to do to be a better football team, and that will be a whole lot more work if somehow C.J. Mosley's a Brown Thursday morning, right?
Right. It's really tough to quantify. And look, I see the physical limitations that Eric Weddle had, just like anyone else. I talked about it a lot. You and I talked about the possibility of him being cut. So I'm not even going to say I disagreed with that move. But that doesn't mean you're not going to miss the player. And in the same way that I struggle with the idea of possibly giving C.J. Mosley what other teams might give him on the open market, I really struggle with that. I think I'm fine with making C.J. Mosley a $12 million a year football player. But 15, if someone really gets nuts, $15, $16 million a year, I can't go there if it's me making that call. But again, you can harp all you want on the cost, but you lose the player, you're going to miss them, and that's not an easily replaced commodity there. And people are going to talk a lot about Patrick Owasso and Kenny Young. And look, Owasso played really well down the stretch last year. Kenny Young showed a lot of promise as a rookie fourth-round pick. They were both part-time players last year. Go look at the snap
And
count.
neither one of them's wearing the headset, by the way.
Right. So you're just losing a lot of experience there. You're losing a lot of that intangible kind of quality that you might not say is worth what Eric Weddle's going to be making with the Rams or what Mosley could make elsewhere if he departs. But it's not as simple as just saying, well, we'll go sign Tyrann Mathieu to play center, and we'll draft another linebacker, and Owasso and Kenny Young will step up and play more, and there's going to be a drop-off there. There just will be. So,
well, the safety position, they thought they could get a better player for that money out on the field, and they felt like there was going to be so many safeties that they had a safety, in that case, that if they didn't get the guy they wanted, they could still get a player that would be a better football player than Eric Weddle that may be ascending and not clearly on the other side of where you want him to be age-wise as well as cap-wise. All that being said, they're taking a lot of institutional knowledge out of this defense, and Wink Martindale has got to be the guy in the middle of all of this saying, I got to have somebody back there to play quarterback, right?
Sure. There's just we talked about with Weddle, he was kind of that traffic cop, right? I mean, he was back there moving around, moving Jefferson around. They played that amoeba front where certain guys were rushing the passer, other guys were dropping in the coverage. I mean, we talked about this all last year, and what did I say over and over and over? I thought the Ravens' defense was greater than the sum of its parts. And how was it greater than the sum of its parts? Guys like Eric Weddle and C.J. Mosley and Terrell Suggs, and if they're already guaranteed that one of them is gone, we know that. If it's going to be two or even all three of them, I'm sorry, you can plug in as many talented players as you want, and I'm not going to say this defense will suddenly go from being top-ranked in total yards to being terrible. There's still plenty of talent on this defense, but you're not going to sit here and tell me that there isn't going to be some significant drop-off and some significant growing pains at the very least. And then when you couple that with young quarterback and a reimagined offense on the other side of the ball, you're right. I mean, you look at this on paper and you say, are you really going to go out there and hypothetically make an argument to sign Le'Veon Bell when you have all of these needs on either side of the ball? So it's just such an interesting time, and I'm not even going to portray it to be a complete gloom and doom kind of situation, but there's just so much uncertainty, and there are so many different ways that this thing can go that when you and I are talking, say, a week from now, 10 days from now, there are so many different scenarios that could play out where we're talking about this team in very positive ways, in potentially negative ways, or just different.
And there's going to be new names. I guess that's the point. There are going to be 2 or 3 names we're going to hear later in the week that Eric DeCosta is the next Tony Jefferson, right? Whatever that's going to be, the next Eric Weddle. They're going to go out into the marketplace. I mean, you talk about the Honey Badger. That was sort of the first name, right?
Sure. I mean, that was the first name that's been rumored, and I still wonder how great of a fit he is, even from the standpoint of he hasn't been a drop-back, single-high kind of safety all that much in his career. He's been a guy who's moved around a whole lot. He's been a nickel corner. He's been a dime back. He's played safety. He's played corner. I mean, you like the versatility, but is he going to give you the same things that Eric Weddle offered from a mental standpoint, from an experience standpoint? And that's where I think there's a fine line here when you're talking about a Weddle walking out the door, a Mosley potentially leaving, even Suggs potentially leaving, and understanding that, Terrell Suggs isn't a star Pro Bowl kind of outside linebacker anymore, but you mentioned it, the institutional knowledge, the experience, the leadership, quite frankly, those are all variables that just because from an analytics standpoint you can't easily quantify those things, that doesn't mean that those things don't exist, and it doesn't mean that those things don't carry some significant value. So that's where I think it's really fascinating for Eric DeCosta, who is a general manager for the first time, to try to massage all that, to try to find what the sweet spot is between saying, okay, we're going to let go of Eric Weddle because he only had 3 pass breakups and 0 interceptions and wasn't as fast and wasn't making as many plays, and we're going to bring someone else in that's going to do a better job in that regard. But we also need to understand that we're going to have to try to make up the mental side of that, and that might just be every player on the defense, every young player on the defense, being a year older, being another year acclimated in Wink Martindale's way of doing things defensively, and maybe you'll make it up some that way, but whoever that one-for-one trade-off is going to be, it's easy to look at the physical side and say, yeah, upgrade, sure. Or in the case of C.J. Mosley, and you're saying it's Owasso and Kenny Young, and maybe you draft another linebacker and say, well, younger and cheaper at the very least, but where are you making up for those intangibles? And I still think that was a big reason why this defense was as effective and, quite frankly, terrific as it was down the stretch last year. But you looked at each individual and said, other than maybe Marlon Humphrey, other than Matt Judon second half of the season, there weren't too many guys you could point to and say, boy, that guy would be coveted all around the league to a really, really high degree. Maybe.
Well, we went back to this, dude. They can give Weddle money. They can give Mosley money. Justin Tucker's been the MVP of this team the last 5 years. Flacco's going to go make $20 million a year. I mean, all of that being said, and we still haven't figured out how to get a better player than our kicker. I mean, that's a fact. I mean, it's just where it's at.
Well, and Marshall Yonda's been their best player on offense, and he's another year older. So. And how much longer is he going to play? So there's a lot going on here, and that's where I keep going back to the Le'Veon Bell question. That there continues to be so much smoke, and there was smoke at the combine and speculation at the combine, and it continues. And look, can you make arguments for Le'Veon Bell? Sure. I mean, my goodness, the Ravens are going to value running the ball, and you're talking about one of the 2 or 3 best running backs in the NFL. But at the same time, I struggle with the idea of, look how good, great their running game was when they made the switch to Lamar Jackson, and you're going to spend and invest that much cap space, that many dollars into the running back position. And my question is, not that Le'Veon Bell is an upgrade over Gus Edwards. He clearly is. There's no disputing that. But is he enough of an upgrade over what they did last year to justify that much more cap spending when you have all of these other questions on both sides of the ball? And that's where I continue to remain skeptical about Bell, but we might be talking about him in a couple days, and if it is, that'll certainly be crazy because, to your point about Justin Tucker and about how this team has lacked elite game-changing playmakers, well, Le'Veon Bell would certainly fit that description. So
we're just not going to pay him for what he did last year, but it'd be nice that he'll run angry against the Steelers. I'd like that.
I'll say this. I mean, you couldn't get more delicious as far as Ravens Steelers if Le'Veon Bell did wind up in Baltimore. I'll say that much.
I hope it goes as well as it did when we stole Woodson, but better than when we stole Carnell Lake or Cordell Stewart. How about that?
Yeah, that's a pretty accurate assessment there. And hey, there are people in Pittsburgh right now that are praying that the Steelers could somehow poach C.J. Mosley from the Ravens. I don't know if that'll happen, but it would certainly create some new spice to this rivalry, that's for sure.
He is Luke Jones. He is Baltimore Luke out on Twitter. All of our WNST coverage brought to you by our friends at the Lee Tessier team. Hey, springtime right around the corner. If you are in the market to buy or sell a home, they are Baltimore's premier realty team and the folks that I trust with my real estate transactions. You can learn more about what they do at LeeTessier.com. Lee's also on magazine covers. I've got those around here too. Sometimes I hold them up. But Lee's a great guy. Met him through the Leukemia Lymphoma Society, and he was the man of the year a couple years ago. My wife was fighting for her life. And they've been doing this for 50 years of experience up there in Harford County, but they do it all through the area. LeeTessier.com. Make sure you check them out. Also, Royal Farms, real fresh, real fast. I pumped the gas over the weekend. I use the ROFO rewards card and the app. When you do that, you get your coffee, you get your Western fries, you get your fried chicken free of charge. Only thing that makes it taste better is when it's free. Make sure you're using that ROFO rewards card. Royal Farms, real fresh, real fast. Also, our friends at Cole Roofing. I'm putting together a whole bunch of cool charity and community stuff here, as well as our Baltimore Positive endeavors. Don Muller's going to join us later on this week, so we'll be talking to him some more about Baltimore Positive. But Cole Roofing sponsoring our community and charity series. Anything you hear around here about saving lives, about good stuff going on in the community, we've been shooting those on Wednesdays now instead of Thursday, so I'm moving some stuff around for Baltimore Positive. We'll be telling you more about Baltimore Positive. The logo is out there. There's a Twitter account as well. The website should be going live in the next week or two, sometime before opening day. It's all brought to you by our friends at Cole Roofing and Gordian Energy. And make sure you're checking out that Gordian knot. I know Bill Cole is proud of 100 years in the roofing business. That's the way they do it at Cole Roofing. I also have a new mug, but it's more like the mug's too small to have coffee in. It feels like a teacup. Nasty at WNST.net finds me. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram. We stream live on our Facebook. And don't forget, any breaking news is going to happen first on the WNST text service. That's all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. The morning newspaper delivers digitally to your email inbox each and every morning at 7 a.m. It's all brought to you by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com. And they're also racing at the Maryland Jockey Club down at Laurel. We had a lot of scuttlebutt, as we do every spring, about the Preakness and about Pimlico and about moving the race. We'll be talking a ton about that over the next 60 days as we get closer to not just Derby preps. We're into Derby preps. We have one of those on Saturday at San Diego. But we're going to be having actual Derby races. We're 5 weeks, 6 weeks away now from the Kentucky Derby. Nasty at WNST.net, Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn and Snapchat and anywhere the web goes. We are WNST.net, AM 1570 and WNST, Towson, Baltimore. And we never stop talking Baltimore sports.